Thank you very much. And many of you, I'm sure, have heard of the well-known activist and with the Ontario Coalition Against Poverty, John Clarke, who will be speaking on OCAP and resistance in the age of austerity.
Thank you very much. This next month will actually be the 25th anniversary of OCAP. And so it's obviously going to be quite easy to summarise that in a few minutes. It's really, if we're talking about austerity, the period that we've been organising has of course been a period of mounting, intensifying austerity, and that has very much shaped what we're doing. If we'd organised in the 25 years before that, I think what I'd be saying would be extremely different in terms of what we've won. But clearly we've organised in a situation where austerity gets worse, and where moreover there is in the working class generally a crisis of effective resistance and opposition. And so I'm not able to report that we've turned back the austerity agenda. Quite the reverse, we're dealing with a situation where people are very much poorer than when we started. But nonetheless, what I'm going to say is that I think we've created a model that has made a difference. And on that basis, we've really undertaken, we've picked up the torch from others who came before in terms of trying to organise that part of the working class that is declared surplus, that is abandoned. And it's long been realised, to the extent to which you can bring organisation into that part of the working class, there's the possibility of transforming it from a passive dead weight to a resisting entity. And that's been the project that we've undertaken. And we've understood, as those who've gone before us, and the last comments actually bring this home incredibly powerfully, that the real weapon that the poor and the unemployed and the surplus have is the capacity, as Piven and Cloud put it, to create political crises by disrupting institutions. And we were in the business of disrupting institutions some time before we came across that quote. But nonetheless, it's our calculated alternative to the strike weapon, the thing that gives the poor, the unemployed, some power. And over the years, we've tried to employ it in a couple of, really at two levels. We've tried, as those who've gone before us have done, to make a difference in people's individual lives, to deal with situations where people are denied, where people face eviction, where people face non-payment of wages, those kinds of things. And we developed a practice that we call direct action casework. And it's been really at the forefront of OCAP. It's been the sort of the centre of what we do. Largely unreported, often unknown, but actually our day-to-day existence in many, many ways. I give many examples, but one that really comes to mind, I'd just like to use as an example. We had a man come to see us who had been working for a unionised workplace, had been injured off the job, was entitled to long-term disability payments, but was not getting anything. And his union had not been able to get him anything. And so he came to us, and we phoned the business agent and said, what's going on? And we're told there's nothing we can do, so said, do we mind if we give it a try? So we go to the insurance company, we bring about 50 of our members in, we walk in and we take over their boardroom. And when they come to see us, we explain, we're here for this man's money. And he gets his money. Now, the reason I use that as an example because of a trade union being involved is absolutely not to try to suggest that we have some incredible power that the union doesn't have. The reverse is the opposite. They are much more powerful than we are. But they have, precisely by being trapped in a framework of legality and respectability, they were rendered passive. They were a giant in chains in that sense, whereas our relatively puny little organisation was able to get the man his money. And I think that really drives home something that's quite important for the unemployed and perhaps important for the labour movement as well. And so we tried to employ that kind of approach in a broader way, in campaigns, to try to stop cutbacks from happening, to demand things, to win things. And I'll deal with one area that I think is really, really important, and that is the fight against the erosion of the adequacy of income support. A really vital consideration. In the province of Ontario, people today on social assistance have a spending power that is 55% below what it would have been in 1994. A dramatic factor but an absolutely central part of the strategy of driving down wages. The explosion of low-wage work would not have been possible without fundamentally undermining the income support programs. And so we've taken up campaigns around that. We've taken up campaigns to try to address this climate of desperation. And in 2005, we came across a program that existed within Ontario's social assistance system called the Special Diet. And this was something that people could access if a medical professional deemed it necessary and filled in the forms. So we took up a whole campaign around it. We organised what we called hunger clinics, and we had sympathetic medical providers sign people up. And then when, as we expected, they started to deny, we mobilised. And we took over boardrooms, we took over, we occupied the Mayor's office at Toronto, the Minister of Community and Social Services office, innumerable actions at welfare offices. And it led to a situation where the Auditor General bemoaned the fact that the program had gone from $6 million a year to $200 million a year. People in other cities started to do the same thing, and poor people just started going to their doctors demanding it. And it led to this incredible situation where we were actually addressing, in part, only taking back a small part, but taking back some of what had been taken away from people. And it was an incredibly powerful campaign. And to this day, through freedom of information, we've discovered that in fact the Special Diet is still paying out, and the amounts are going up and up and up. It has actually made a real fundamental difference. Similarly, we combined in something called the Raise the Rates campaign with QP and with a whole series of local anti-poverty organisations, and we took up a fight against the fact that they were going to destroy a benefit called the Community Start-up and Maintenance Benefit. Something people can access if they're trying to obtain housing or if they're threatened with the loss of their housing. They were going to try and replace it, and they succeeded, with a patchwork of municipal programs. But they were going to cut the funding in half. And so we took up a whole campaign that involved a week of action, culminated in a week of action, where we organised a camp out outside one MPP's office in Toronto. There were occupations of offices that took place. First Nations communities got involved. There was actually a stoppage of the Trans-Canada Highway at one point. There was a whole campaign taken up, and it led to a situation where at the last minute they announced they were putting $42 million back into the programme. A partial victory. We fought hard on questions of income support, and it's an escalating agenda. The real factor now that they're trying to include, and it's come largely from what's happening in the UK, is they're trying to actually throw the disabled into the scramble for the lowest paying jobs on offer by removing the adequacy of disability benefits. And so when the government was planning, the provincial government was planning, and we understand Wynne personally favoured this, to merge ODSP and Ontario Works into one program. Similarly, a campaign was taken up by us and by many other people, and it led to a situation where that merger was eventually dropped. It did not go through. The attack on people on ODSP continues, but the actual merger was prevented. At the extreme edge of this process of undermining the adequacy of support and impoverishing people is that people arrive in conditions of literal destitution, of homelessness. And not surprisingly, one of the major areas that OCAP has worked, focused in the City of Toronto, is around questions of homelessness. And over the years we've engaged in many struggles. We've taken abandoned buildings and held them for periods of time. The longest, I think, operated for several months. We called it the Pope Squad because we took it during a papal visit to sort of when the police, we thought, might be a little more worried about their PR sort of, situation. And so we organised a whole series of those kinds of actions, but we've also tried to address the incredible levels of brutal overcrowding and neglect that occur within the hostel system. In Toronto, more than 4,000 people any night are sleeping in hostels. And they don't want to provide adequate levels of provision, of shelter. They don't even want to provide warehouses for human beings. And the reason they don't want to do that, of course, is because they don't want Toronto to get the reputation as the place to come if you're destitute. So they make it as hard as possible. They crowd them out as much as they possibly can. And we've challenged that over the years with some success. Again, success in the sense that we've been able to win concessions, not success in the sense that we've been able to win a decent and humane and adequate system of providing for people. The conditions continue to get worse. But some 2 years ago, we demanded that the city actually implement its policy of keeping shelter occupancy at a maximum of 90%. And we took up a whole campaign around it that included an occupation of City Hall. We went in with dozens of people, put down sleeping bags in front of the mayor's office and declared that we were setting up a homeless shelter right in front of his office. At the time it was Rob Ford, who wasn't very fond of homeless shelters being set up in front of his office. We took lots of arrests, but it led to a situation where warming centres for the homeless were opened up, where more bed spaces were opened up, and where 24-hour drop-ins for homeless women and trans people were established. So we now deal with a situation where, in addition to the overcrowding, a la New York City, they're trying to disperse the homeless to the fringes, to open shelters in the outlying areas of the city, and we're challenging that. At the beginning of this year, in a space of about 10 days, 4 homeless men died. One of them froze to death in a bus shelter at Yonge and Dundas, the busiest intersection in the country. So just a couple of months ago, we organised a march from City Hall to the Seton House hostel that is threatened with closure, and on the way we went by Yonge and Dundas, and we held a memorial for the man who died in that bus shelter. But it wasn't just a memorial, it was a shutting down of the busiest intersection in the country for 40 minutes. And so when the day he died, the day he perished in that bus shelter, nobody knew. But the day we blocked Yonge and Dundas, everybody knew. And that was, I think, a powerful statement that was made. So that struggle against abandonment is an enormous question, because I think we're dealing with a situation where the attack, the austerity attack on the poor and unemployed is going beyond now the levels of reduced provision and moving into an area of literal social abandonment. If you watch the policies that are being taken up by the Cameron government in the UK, the work capability assessment that they're imposing on disabled people, the benefits sanctioning system that cuts people off on such a level, it's clear that they want to create a situation where you work for low wages or you find yourself destitute. But any level of social provision is really being taken away. I'll wrap up, but let me just end by saying that at this juncture in OCAP's existence, the quarter-century mark, it seems to me that we've fought a defensive battle against a mounting agenda before not just we, but the working class generally finds itself at this moment in some retreat. But I do think that we have created an actual model, a pole, a basis for organising. I think we've actually demonstrated that it is possible to fight to win. And I'll end with something that may seem a little bizarre, but it's an image that always sticks in my mind. Is during the course of the special diet campaign, we got a call from a woman, a Somali woman with 6 children, and she called the OCAP office, and I just happened to pick up the phone myself, and she wanted to tell us something, and she was crying her eyes out. And what she wanted to tell us was that for the first time in their lives, her children were eating fresh strawberries. That was what she had to tell us. And I mean, I think it's wonderful that those kids had that fresh fruit. And I think it's wonderful that the mother had the satisfaction and the happiness of seeing them eat that fruit, and it was worth it just for that. But there's something much more to it than that. Being able to win that was an actual, for that woman, for that family, for that community, was an actual demonstration of the fact that you don't have to be a passive victim, that you can combine with others in the same situation, and you can fight, and you can win, and you can make a difference. And on that basis, I think the 25 years have been worth it. Thank you.